Ladies and gentlemen, today is February 20th, 2014. And this is the KNKL Show, episode 167. I'm your host, Kienan Lafferty, and this is the show where we learn to be better artists. And today we're going to be jumping into a marketing piece that I'm working on for Blizzard Entertainment. It is going to be featuring Diablo 3 and the upcoming release of Reaper of Souls. But before we get into that, I do have a couple announcements that I need to make. One of which, if you are residing anywhere near Sacramento, and you're going to be going to Wizard World, I am going to be there in Artist Alley selling prints, selling many mass prints. And speaking of that, I want to say thank you to everyone who has gotten us to where we are on Patreon. We're about to hit the next goal, which is $450. So when that hits that magical number, I'm going to be sending out all these prints to everybody who joins. So if you sound interested, or if you are interested in that, just click that little button right there, get Emma stuff, and you will get Emma stuff. Alright, that's enough blabbing. Let's go ahead and get into what we're going to be talking about today. And basically, I'm going to be showing you guys the beginning process, because basically I'm going to be outlining my entire process. You guys have asked for this over and over and over again, about how I go about creating a large piece of marketing art. Like all of the details and sketches and all this stuff. And I'm going to show you everything, okay? Everything. And speaking of that, before we get into the good stuff, we need to take a stroll to our nicely laid out college-ruled ring binder, or ringed notebook paper, okay? Now I know this is really not attractive to anybody, but this is actually where my process starts. And I think I can show you guys everything on this. You can't necessarily read it, but this is just me writing down a bunch of ideas that I have for the piece, okay? And usually these ideas come to me as I'm just like laying down, like right before I'm about to go to bed. You know those times when you're just like laying there about to go to sleep and you get this great idea? Well, it's always good to have a notebook here so you can write things down. I usually like to shoot for 20, and this is kind of like a technique where I just write down as many ideas as I can, even if they're like really stupid ideas. Like I had an idea of Malthael basically freaking slicing a unicorn's head off, which you will see in a moment on the time lapse. And just silly ideas like that. You just get all that stuff down because you're emptying your mind. You're getting, like you're warming it up. You know, you're getting started. You're starting to think about the piece. You don't just sit down and start drawing right from the get-go as I inhale my own saliva. Okay, so I did that, as well as another thing that I did, as you can see in my little journal right here, I wrote down, okay, what are the key words that I want for this piece? What are the key words? And this has to do with setting down a definite purpose. I know we're getting all freaking like zen and like meditating upon the piece, you know, but stuff is really, really important. It's a recurring theme that I notice myself. Anytime I have success with anything, it's because I had a definite purpose and a definite idea of what I wanted to accomplish before I even sat down and started drawing it. So, keywords for this I've written down are composition, control of color and focal points, unique ideas, and a clever story. I think if I hit all of these points, the piece will have been considered a success. Alright, so now that we got all the boring stuff out of the way, let me go ahead and show you. Let me show you my actual process via time lapse. Let's go ahead and get that started. I'll pause it every now and then and kind of tell you what I'm doing here. So you can see, let's actually just start at the beginning. Let's start at the very beginning. Okay, so look at this right here. This is just an idea that I threw down. Actually, it was the day before. I was working on something completely different, but I really liked just the placement of the mouth and the eyes, like how they were kind of like really kind of spaced far apart. Almost like the head's really stretched out, and I was like, hey, you know what? I kind of like that. Maybe I can take that in and work that into this piece. And I'm going to be illustrating the monks, both the male and the female, as well as Malthael in the background with his cool little scythe things. So you can see how I built upon that initial sketch. And I begin basically doing my line sculpting. And this isn't even, I want to stress it, this isn't the exact pose or the exact thing that I'm going to be using for the final composition. This is me just kind of getting warmed up and getting used to experimenting with styles, because I really think that my style is something that sets me apart and it makes me unique with any piece of art that I do. So I want to make sure that I have just that little hint of comic book flavor added into these characters. So let's go ahead and continue with that. Continuing with that. And in the meantime, on the other monitor, while I'm working on this, I've got, you know, references up. I've got the little, you know, like if you go on the Diablo 3 page, you can see the little animated monks, you know, just like sitting there with their battle stance, and I'm just looking at their iconic clothing and kind of just figuring it out and figuring out how I can make it my own style, basically. I was having a lot of fun, especially with this guy. I love his freaking monster's beard. And like these little lines that go down, you know, notice how I just put those lines in. All of this stuff happens. You could call this like designing. I don't know much about design, but I feel like as I continue to do stuff like this, I'm getting better at it. I can like see these shapes. I can see that little circle in the belt and like this. It's almost like white hair or like areas of white in the beard that go down, but then they make this cool shape and a cool design. Might not even be seen in the final piece, but it's just cool to lay down the law like that. So, of course, you got to give him his good muscles. Thick to thins. I'm always thinking about thick to thins. Large shoulder. Kind of go down to a slightly skinnier bicep. Because these guys, what I like about the monks is they're not quite as like burly or brutish as the warriors or the oh, what are they called? Are they called warriors? Barbarians. They're not as bulky as the barbarians. So they got a little bit more of this lean mass thing going on. And I dig that a lot. A lot. So, continue with this. It is just getting warmed up. Figure, hey, I'm going to be drawing both male and female. It'll be good to know exactly what they're going to look like or what I'm kind of shooting for in terms of the style. And just really after I drew these, I was like, I get excited. I get excited. And this was something that I actually used to do back when I was working at Riot Games as well. This is me getting ready to do the Malfail thing. And I'll talk about that while I'm doing this. At Riot Games, I would do the same thing. I would do the same exact thing. Like, say, I remember specifically when I was working on Shyvana, one of Shyvana's skins. Before I even sat down and started drawing the actual splash composition, I just drew a picture over to the side of Shyvana, right? Like, almost like a bust picture, like just down to her chest or her waist. And just like focusing on her face and how I would just draw her if I was doing like a piece of fan art. And then after that, I just got, it just like builds almost mental muscle and it gets you more confident with what you're about to do. So, and this is actually going to be, I'm gonna go ahead and send this over to Blizzard when I'm done with it anyway, like even if they don't use it. But I'm just gonna be like, hey guys, I got a great idea for this. You should just check this out. Take a look at this. I think it's just game-changing material. Make everybody want to play this game. Malhail chopping off a unicorn's head. So, but do you notice how like I'm having fun. I'm having fun. I'm relaxing. And before we jump into this next part, I want to finish what I was saying. So. Basically, all of that stuff that you just saw had nothing to do, it is not going to be used at all in the final piece. And I spent probably about a couple hours just drawing up those things, if anything, yeah, at least 2 to 3 hours. And I want you guys to understand that, again, like I didn't have any of this process. When I started working in the professional industry, I would start these splashes, I would basically just start drawing right from the beginning. Just drawing what I thought the composition was going to be. Or I'd try to like, I'd draw the character and then try to fit the background and everything in with it. As opposed to just relaxing, having some time to think, right? Thinking, writing down my ideas in my, notepad, journal, whatever. And then when you go into it, you're already, it's almost like, imagine stretching. It's like stretching before a big workout or stretching before a big competition. This is really what industrial art is, or working in the industry. It's competition. It really is. You're putting your best foot forward at all times. That's what professional athletes do. You wouldn't see some professional athlete just like get up and just like not even bother putting on his shoes, just like starts running down the track, didn't even stretch or anything. Again, you wouldn't do that. So you want to make sure you're training. You're stretching out. You are loosening up the bolts in your mind or whatever. Not the best analogy, but you know what I'm talking about. Oiling the bolts, oiling the gears and cogs of the mind. And now we move into, finally, we're starting to move into something we're going to be using in the final piece. And this is where I start to figure out composition. Composition is very key with all this stuff, okay? So this goes back to way when we were talking about creating poses. Notice how I'm not drawing the character's face and then trying to attach the body to it and like, oh, that would be cool if his hand was like outstretched like this. Then I draw the hand out. I'm not like building this person like a tree. It's just like I start with like circles, simple shapes, and flow. I'm thinking about like this line going up here, and then this line there, and then these sides and everything. You think about flow, composition, leading the eye, all that stuff. And the best thing about doing it this way, another thing I want to say is, the good thing about doing it this way is that you're working small. Like whatever you do, do not start laying out your thumbnails or laying out your piece on the full page. Because A, your Photoshop might lag if it can't handle it, because we're working really high res. Well, that's the other thing I want to talk about. I'm actually working, I think I'm working at a 12 by 18 at 300 DPI. A lot of people ask me what canvas size I like to use. This one this one specifically is 12 by 18. But I usually work 16 by 9 at 300 DPI. And the reason why I do that is because the aspect ratio is 16 by 9 is exactly what a computer screen's desktop would be. So if you make a really cool picture and someone likes it, hey, just grab that, put it as my desktop. People love that stuff. So 16 by 9, 300 DPI. Don't forget it! Don't forget it ever. Okay. So, so yeah, you can see I'm just laying down a bunch of ideas. I'll literally just duplicate things down. That's another thing that I like to do. When I'm working on something or I'm going to make some minor changes to something, I'll always take the layer and I'll duplicate it right on up. Okay? So, in fact, let me take that away. That way you can actually see it. I'll take the layer and duplicate it up. Alrighty then. Let me just put that back. Now that you saw the layers, this icon is new. I need to make sure everything's working properly with it. I don't like the fact that it necessarily covers up the layers, but I'm not usually referencing them. And there's supposed to be like a link that's supposed to be there through the whole video. Makes it easier for me to just slap it across the whole video. Anyway, we're moving on. So I had this other idea. And this was the night before of this monk. He's like kind of like meditating on top of this huge post, and it's more of like a 2D. It's more of like a 2D design feeling to it. Whereas the other ones that I was working on, these ones back here, these have a much more League of Legends splash style, comic book hand in the face feeling, you know. And I do like stuff like that, but I wanted to try something that was a little bit more like designy. Right? So it's a little bit more flat. It's more of like a, I don't know exactly how to put it, but it's more of a design as opposed to, hey, I'm gonna punch you in the face type of thing. So, and yeah, it's good. This is the time. This is the time to get all of those ideas out of your system. And yeah, I actually had this funny idea. Me and Colton, we were talking about, oh, hey, that'd be cool if it was both the monks kind of balancing and they were holding each other's hands and like, they were like reaching down and these spirits were like coming up the pole and there was like this huge like story happening within it. And I was like, that's a cool story, but might not be communicated that clearly. And we're not going to be able to get much detail with this, like by the time the characters are this small, because I needed the post to be really high up so we could see. There was supposed to be like a raging sea down here, like the ocean or something. And I don't know why there would be like a post in the middle of the ocean, but doesn't matter because it serves the story. So after all that, I decided, no, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to this original one because I really dig into the flow on it, really liking everything. So, oh, and another thing I want to talk to you guys about. Earlier in the time lapse, you saw that I actually wrote break on the Photoshop document itself. That's because I was actually, believe it or not, taking a break. Do you know how important breaks are for artists? Let me tell you. When I first started working in the industry and I didn't take breaks because I was just like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for breaks. And just go and go and go and go and go. I started developing many different problems within the tendons of my hand. My wrist would hurt so badly at the end of the day. And it even started going up. Like when there's problems with your wrist, it'll naturally go up your arm. And then it got to the point where my back was really, really starting to hurt. And I would be so sore, and it would just worry me more because I'm like, oh no, this can't be happening to me because this is my job. And if I'm in pain and I can't work, then I'm gonna be a hobo on Santa Monica tapping some freaking drums or some freaking buckets to make drums, you know, which would be pretty cool anyway. But you know what I'm saying. So it's very important that you take breaks. My new schedule, I actually rest more than I work. I work for 26 minutes out of the hour, then the remaining 34 of the remaining 34 minutes of the hour, I'm resting. And that means that I'm getting up from my computer and I'm walking away from it. Okay? I go and do other things. I go make a sandwich. I go cook some lunch. And it's really, really awesome because I think it keeps you organized. I just set a timer on my phone. Okay? You can get like one of those little egg things that you like twist half the egg or whatever works for you. But set a timer and figure out a good plan that works for you that involves working and resting. And the other really cool thing about it that I've said before about resting that 34 minutes is you get all these ideas. You get all these ideas about when you come back and you sit down in your chair, you're like, oh, hey, I just realized, hey, this girl is like punching the air. That probably doesn't make a lot of sense. This guy over here, he's kicking some demon in half, and that's cool. But this girl, she's like punching the air. And I know they do that thing where it like shoots out the airwaves, but I wanted something maybe a little bit more different. Or something just a little bit more, I don't know exactly how to put it. But you're about to see exactly what I'm talking about. So I came back from my break, right? And I had a couple more ideas. Because ideas naturally come to you when you're not trying to think about them. Like if I were to just sit down and I was like, oh man, I gotta think of some more ideas. They're never gonna come. Maybe some will, but they'll be really crappy ideas and they'll just be a complete waste of your time. But if you get up, walk away, take a break, you're on a schedule, you feel good about yourself because you're on a schedule and you're following a plan, then naturally ideas just come to you. And this is what I'm talking about right here. This is the idea that I had when I got up and walked away. I came back and I was like, okay, that would be really cool if it was like this, right? Instead of like this palm going like this and like shooting the air out. What if it was more like, like she was charging something or just like ready to attack? I had this really cool like underlighting thing. And this was me experimenting with an entirely different piece. It's like, oh, this is nice and everything, but it's really complicated. What if we did something really simple? But the only weak points about this, or the things that were missing from this as opposed to the other one, was there wasn't as much story. Yeah, it's cool because the girl's there and we can have all the detail in her face and have like some glowing runes on her arm and all that stuff, but really when it comes down to it is I think that story in a piece is one of the most important things. Allowing somebody to look at it at first glance and be like, wow, that is an awesome painting. But then the more they look at it, the more they enjoy it. I think that's really an awesome thing that that I like to try to achieve with my work. So, but I still entertain the idea because I was like, oh yeah, I can still make this cool. I can still make this cool. So I'm just messing around with the legs. Nothing's really working, and I'm just kind of sculpting the lines, and it's all just set up. Like I really hope you guys understand how many different pieces I make that never see the light of day, that never even get used, and how that is actually okay. That is okay. Because that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. You have to, it's like the cream of the crop. You plant all these crops, right? As opposed to just one little head of cabbage and you hope that it's good, right? You just plant hundreds of them and then you pick out the very best one that works for you. So, and where this came into play was I drew that picture and I was like, okay, well, it's not going to work on its own, but I do like the pose that picture had of the girl with her hand out like that. So I was like, hey, I wonder what would happen if I just lassoed that entire piece, brought it into my old one, and then set it here. And then lo and behold, it was amazing. It was amazing, and I loved it. And I'm just kind of like playing around with stuff. That's the other thing, is just lasso. Lasso, copy, do anything that you can with the tools that are available to you. Don't worry about it being cheap or like, oh, well, a real artist would make, he would be able to sketch out a picture perfectly the first time. He wouldn't have to lasso this. You can't do that in real life. You can't lasso things in real life. Well, guess what? As a digital artist, you can do it. So you can't get hung up on all these morals about, oh, well, this is right, this is wrong, this is what a good artist would do. All that matters is what you end up with. The only thing that matters in the end is the result. So, and believe it or not, this was something I used to struggle with a lot. And I told you guys about this. I used to struggle all the time with, and for me, it was brushes. It's always brushes. Because I was like, oh, well, a really good artist, they wouldn't need to use these patterned or texturized brushes, right? A good artist would know how to make those textures on his own. So all I would do, like, let's say that I wanted to get this texture right here, okay? See this, like all the little dots and kind of chalky texture? I would literally take this brush and I would go in and I'd start making little dots like this, because that's what a good artist would do. And I pride myself on it. I pride myself on the fact that, yeah, I didn't need any custom brushes because I'm a good artist. All I used was the regular stock round brush. And it's like one of the dumbest things that you could ever do. Like, I don't even know why I thought that way. But anyway. Okay, so now this is probably where I'm going to leave you guys off on, and we are going to continue with the series going forward throughout each day of the week next week. So Monday through Thursday, I'm basically going to be giving you guys an update, talking about the latest time lapse, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how I take this to a finalized piece. Alrighty then. So, thank you guys for joining me on YouTube. Please thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. Remember to go check out the Patreon if you want prints. It'd be really awesome. And yeah, we're going to Wizard World, WizardCon, whatever, Sacramento. Super excited about that. You guys take care of yourselves. I'll see you on the live Q&A. Until next time, take care.